Hi, this is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in to Simply Enough.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you, and remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period. Welcome to Simply Enough, where we celebrate you.
Because you are enough. Just as you are.
Period. That there's actually so much to be learned by the examples that are just simply done in nature.
And penguins are like fireworks for me. I see them and I just automatically smile.
You are the penguin god.
So even though there's an exception to the rule, it can still fit in the category.
And there's specialness in not fitting in that rule, which in living a life fully, it isn't really about being normal or fitting in.
Be open to finding your community in places that you may not expect it. Welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Zachary Leonard.
I'm Elizabeth Ignacio.
And in typical form, I'm back to introducing the episode because for those of you that have been with us, you know that Elizabeth does not like to kick off an episode. So I'm back.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. But, we, in thinking about our last episode, which I've said so many times just how much I love that episode and how dense and rich it was. There was a piece that came out of it that you didn't even know was my love and affinity for penguins. And for those of you that didn't listen, I had made that comment in the episode, and I have a story about why, and I think it would be an interesting way to start this episode. So would that be okay if I share?
Absolutely. I had no idea when you mentioned it. I'm like, penguins, where?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, once people know you like something, and they just want to shower you in gifts, like you get all the things, right? You get all that. So awesome. It is awesome. So I have a ton of penguin stuff, all of which I love. And I also love Stitch from, Disney's Lilo and Stitch. And I have like all the Stitch stuff. So it is a nice thing to know about a friend of yours when they like something that you then want to shower them. So yes, I have penguin stuff everywhere. And penguins are like fireworks for me. I see them and I just automatically smile. Mm-hmm. And I turn into like 6-year-old Zachary all over again. And that's largely because of the story that I'm going to tell. So I have an older sister and 2 younger brothers, family of 6. And we grew up pretty poor. My parents did everything they could to support us. We were very fortunate. We got to go to Catholic education. We had private education. That was a priority for my family. Because of some of those expenses, right? Things were tight in our house a lot. And we didn't really, having gone to a private school, we saw families of means and also saw families that were probably in the same position as us. And the material identity was very much, we were aware of, right? Like who had what and who didn't have and whatnot. But yet, for whatever reason, it just was a household of joy. We'd play a lot and we'd go to the beach, and because we lived in Southern California. And so it wasn't like we were always aware of what we did or didn't have, right? But I would be lying if I didn't say that, that was also something that was prevalent in my growing up. So all that's to say, Christmas was a time, or Easter was a time when we got gifts, but we got very few gifts because it was hard on our family financially. And we were also blessed to be supported by a community, and anybody that's part of a organized religion or whatnot. I think they would probably agree that that's one of the most beautiful things about it is it's really a community of people who try to uplift each other. So we were lucky that we were part of a community. So gifts would show up on our front porch, and sometimes our tuition would be paid, and people really stepped up to take care of us, which when I think about it is just truly humbling and beautiful. But we didn't have a lot of things first of all, and then we didn't have a lot of things that were brand new, right? So we got a lot of hand-me-downs, people's clothes, and I remember being a young kid and also just kind of wanting something to be mine, right? Well, our Easter tradition gift-wise was we would get something that we could wear, either to wear to church, like a brand new shirt or a tie or something like that, a bow tie, usually clip-on, not a real one. Now I know how to tie a real one, or we would get a bathing suit or a pair of flip-flops or slippers, as they say in Hawaii, or And one year we got new towels. Right now, typically, and I don't know if this is the same for anybody else, but typically we take our bath towels to the beach. So we just took,
right,
bathroom towels, which are like super absorbent and they get sand everywhere. You really don't want to do that. But anyway, so there's a reason why there are beach towels, but we got a beach towel. We each got a beach towel for Easter. And my beach towel had penguins on it, which is really kind of funny when you think about it, like a beach towel that has penguins on it, but
oh yeah, that's right.
Not like
Arctic
shells
beach, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't really think of a penguin when you think about going to the beach, but anyway. So, and of course, in our family, it wasn't really like Zachary got a towel and Joshua got a towel and Leah got a towel. And it was like we all got towels, but for whatever reason, that towel, because it was mine and it was new and it was given to me, became something very important to me, and something where I saw like my own kind of identity growing, or now I had something to latch onto that made me feel I had something for me. I don't know if that's making sense
it
at all,
was your own. So as opposed to a hand me down, for example, which I also myself got a lot of, rather than a hand me down. So it's somebody else's that is being given to you. This is for you, with you in mind, and it is now yours.
Yeah. Yeah. And the stories that get embodied in it are mine, right? And they're not the stories that somebody else gave. You see this in movies or whatnot, where a kid gets like a journal or something, and there's that, that book or whatever it is marks the beginning of some kind of creative process or some journey for that person. And because of its newness, it's like it starts right there. So in some ways, in some kind of weird way, and only in retrospective I see it this way, but that towel was kind of like the beginning for me in that way. And I would be possessive of it too. Like we'd go to the beach and I would be like, that is my towel, and they're like, it's just some towels. I'm like, and I was very possessive over these towels, and really came to see penguins as like my animal. So it wasn't just the towel, but then now it's like, I own all the penguins, right?
Yep.
You
are the penguin god, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hands off. You can have turtles or whatever it is, but penguins are mine. And then, you grow up and you start to learn about animals and whatnot, and you learn about penguins. And you're learning about birds or whatever, and you learn all the rules about birds, and then you learn that there are exceptions to the rules, and then you learn about these birds that don't fly, right? And penguins are birds that don't fly, but they're like wicked swimmers. And so you learn about the rules, then you learn about the exceptions, and then penguins started to morph for me to be an animal that I could link a sense of difference that I found internally, but also a sense of belonging, right? So I don't know if any of you have seen any of the, the nature films and whatnot about penguins, but they are a diverse group of animals. Like you've got the chin strap penguins that have the little line across the chin, which is why they're called chin strap, or the rock hoppers that have these like feather-like.
Oh, you really know a lot. Oh yeah, like they're really your thing, huh?
They really are. And I'm not kidding. Like I turn into 6-year-old Zachary all over again when I see them, because their movements are cute, and just the way they swim, and the way they take care of each other, and the fact that they're technically birds, but most people wouldn't identify them as birds because they don't fly. And so that you have this like big rule that means to be a bird, one must fly, but they aren't flyers, but they're still birds. And so as a kid, then you're like, oh, so even though there's an exception to the rule, it can still fit in the category. And for me, that was huge.
And there's specialness. Sorry, but there's specialness in not fitting in that rule. Yeah. Right. I mean, it is what makes penguins, one of the many things, but it is one of the things that makes penguins special and unique, in that they don't fall into the normal category or the common category.
Right.
Which, in living a life fully, it isn't really about being normal or, again, fitting in or being common. We are all individually made specially as we are, just as we are. And it's not about the common or the rule or the normal. Sorry to
No,
interrupt that.
No, you're not interrupting at all. That you're absolutely right. I think for a young impressionable individual, and I think you probably have similar stories as an immigrant, as a queer or a adolescent who recognizes that there are some internal differences that he has, but he doesn't know what they are. And then later he comes to realize that, oh, that could get him killed, or that could get him ostracized from his family, or that could get him blah, 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 blah. That you start to see that specialness is not something that you actually want to own, because that specialness could bring harm and could bring danger and whatnot. But at the same time, I had this beautiful animal that I had grown up with. And I do believe that it was actually universe, God, whoever you believe, that put that gift in my path so that I could see that it's okay to be quote unquote different. And that not only that, okay, so then the other part of it is, once you learn about penguins, you learn that they are incredible. They're a incredible community. They take care of each other. And if you look at emperor king penguins specifically, that face the toughest conditions on our planet, right? Antarctica is that's why it's an uninhabited continent, is because you just can't live there, but they do, right? And they
don't just live, they thrive.
They thrive.
Right? It's not just surviving, yeah. They're thriving.
And they, one of the things that they do is they huddle up and they take turns just battling the frigid winds and temperatures and everything of Antarctica. And they cycle through who is on the outside and then who moves into the middle so that they can keep each other warm. So not only do I have this incredible animal, this example in nature, which is so simplistic, and when you think about it, that specialness is beautiful and does exist and is celebrated and is applauded, but then also there are a community just like you that you can find that will support you and that will be there to protect you during very difficult times and dangerous times. And when I didn't necessarily feel that, once I started to recognize, well, there's something different about me, and I feel alone, or I feel lonely, or I don't know who else is out there that is like me. So, what started out as somewhat of I don't want to say silly, because I think that's got a pejorative sense, but not knowing necessarily how penguins would shape my life just by that one act has really become, for me, why penguins are such like an anchor or a support through very difficult times along my early adolescent journey. And then also how they provided such joy and happiness and silliness and fun and what at the same time. So not only was it a strong metaphor for me, but it also just provided a lot of enjoyment. So it was both. I was fulfilled by learning about the animals, but then I also learned tremendous about myself.
Do you find yourself calling upon your inner penguin as an adult?
That's a funny question. Well, I definitely will do a penguin waddle.
No, I'm so sorry. What I mean by that.
Yes.
So what I mean, sorry about that. Okay. That was on me, because that was an inarticulate question, because I already had in my own mind. So as much as, just like you love penguins and people that know that about you, therefore gift you with many a penguin in different ways, shapes, or forms. Many who know me know how much I love Wonder Woman, as I've talked about in previous episodes. And so I have been blessed with gifts in various shapes and forms of Wonder Woman. Or if somebody themselves sees a Wonder Woman merch, they'll take a picture and text it to me and say, I'm thinking of you, which just warms my heart so much to know that people know that about me and know how much that means to me, and therefore just letting me in on their day that way by letting them know, or letting me know that they're thinking of me.
Right.
But it's not just the merch, right? It's literally, I was talking about how there are times like with the waist trainer trying to summon my inner Wonder Woman. So literally the idea, the identity, the strengths of Wonder Woman, I literally find myself in certain situations where I think of, summoning my inner Wonder Woman to get me through this scenario, or get me through this mindset, or get me through this situation. So I summon my inner Wonder Woman. That's what I mean by do you summon at times your inner penguin in
I've never really
situations
thought about it that
that get
way.
you through it.
I've never thought about it that way, but I am now, because there's really not much different. And I've never thought of penguins necessarily as heroic in the way that I think we think about Wonder Woman or superheroes or things like that, but they truly are. I mean, when you look at what they battle, not even just from their predators, like seals and whatnot are very dangerous. They're excellent swimmers and they prey on them, and then they're in large groups. So inevitably they're going to lose somebody, they're going to lose a penguin. But then also just the temperatures and where they live and everything. So their very presence on this earth and what they battle means they are heroic in many ways. But I've just never thought about it that way. So thank you for that. I guess.
And well, and it's, we talked about in previous episodes also a lot about spectrum. Like, it doesn't have to be either or ends of the extreme. And yes, Wonder Woman is known as a superhero, but it's not even necessarily always having to go to the heroic or find the heroic, because actually what's beautiful about the penguin in what you were describing is actually in their simplicity of them just being themselves, just as they are, period. Meaning that I know I'm going to be thinking about penguins more now, in that in those times when I'm feeling different or excluded from, a category, right? So just like you said, the category of birds or the title of birds, and do they really fit in? There's many a time, like, am I really the epitome of a mom, or am I really the epitome of a doctor? I get that so many times, like, you're a doctor. I never would have thought that you're a doctor. And I'm just kind of like, why? What image do you have in your mind, or what definition do you have in your mind that I'm not fitting for it to be such a surprise to you? So when I feel different or excluded, I'm now going to think penguin, because that's really the simplicity of the penguin not flying. Still, they are themselves a bird, as you said, and it's not always about having to, again, fit in or be the norm or fit the rule.
And then remind me to talk about the movie they made specifically about that point, with penguins as the vehicle for that point.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
But then there's also, summoning my inner penguin when I'm feeling excluded and different. But then also the lesson in terms of community, where, they're a part, the one penguin's a part of a bigger community that will take care of each other. And also, as humans, at least in particular, especially when one is feeling alone, one might feel like, well, I have no community. But actually, the community is there. Sometimes what it takes, though, is asking or pointing out, hey, community, I need you. And it's amazing who comes out, to surround you and to protect you and to just let you know that they're there for you. Because being alone isn't in and of itself necessarily, depending on the meaning that you put on it, being alone isn't a bad thing. And many people find strengthening in having to sometimes retreat and be alone and refuel and recharge. But it's the feeling of loneliness. And what is lonely? Lonely is feeling disconnected or not connected. And community is connection. And sometimes that does mean, when feeling alone, reach out yourself to ask for a connection, because people want to be there. It's just a lot of times when we're deep in our feelings of loneliness, we think that there is nobody out there for connection. But there are. Reach out and ask. And it's amazing the people that show up when they just know. Sometimes people just don't know that you are in need of connection, but they're happy to connect. So there's a lot there in Penguin. No wonder you love them. There's a lot so there.
There's even more, but I want to jump off what you just said. I'm one of those people. I tend to recharge by being alone. I very much like my own time. It takes out of me to be in large groups of people, the energy of that, or having to schmooze or network or do any of those things that I had to do as a, school administrator or whatnot. I enjoy them. And I think people would think that I'm an extrovert, that I actually get recharged by doing that. But no, at the end of the day, I really do prefer time by myself, quiet time. Right. But I think for a while, I associated needing that time and wanting to be alone with also like disconnecting. And I'm not the best about reaching out to somebody and saying, okay, well, what I need right now is I actually need connection, but I need like good connection for me, which is one-on-one connection and open up and whatnot. So even more so channeling my inner penguin, to your point about it doesn't have to be heroic in that sense. I'm still learning how to say, I need this right now from somebody else.
Yes. And especially, again, speaking to our American friends, listeners, and viewers, there's so much of a championing of independence and self-assuredness and self-made success. And it's almost glorified to not need help. But that's actually the most unnatural thing in the world, to not need help and not look for and want connection. And I know I myself, in many stages of my life, including now as an adult, but actually not in many, probably in every stage of my life, whether it was elementary and then high school and then college and then med school and then residency and then as a parent and as in my career now, where I have felt very alone in a group. And yet I can also feel quite strong alone. So it's not the singularity of aloneness. It is literally that singularity of feeling disconnected.
Right.
And that's where the skill and the lesson learned of reaching out and just saying, I need help and I need connection. And I just need you to sit here and listen to me. I don't need you to fix anything.
Right.
Because fixing isn't always connection. Sometimes, again, just being present and giving space without judgment is the real connection. And, connection and loneliness is an epidemic right now. In Britain, they actually, they in the cabinet, there's, Minister of Defense and Minister of Economy and that kind of thing. They actually have, since I think 2018, a Minister of Loneliness.
Really?
Yeah. It's an official position. They have a Minister of Loneliness because of, and notice 2018, this is even pre-COVID.
Right.
That the impact and effect loneliness has in a society, and honestly within that society, therefore its productivity and economy. And it's just amazing how loneliness is more rampant than one can tell, and yet the cure is connection.
I didn't know they had that position.
It's a real position, Minister of Loneliness.
Wow.
And it's needed. Sorry, go
needed.
Ahead.
So many things. I just to get a bit of a giggle as you were talking and I took a sip of water, I happened to catch down like a reflection of me. Wow, that was a really hard sentence for me to get out. My water bottle, so it's my Hydro Flask and it's got beautiful Aloha print on it. But I had gotten this sticker and it's a penguin. So for those of you that are listening, not watching, it's a penguin sticker and it's got the Pride colors on it. So I was with my best buddy in Louisville, and we were walking past this hotel, and this hotel had these stickers on their windows, and it was during so I think it was June. Yeah, it was June. Oh my gosh, he's going to kill me if it's not June. It doesn't really matter. They were on the windows. And so we went in and I said, by any chance, do you have these stickers? Because, okay, not only is it a penguin, which I love, right? But it's got the pride colors on it. and they gave me a bunch of free stickers. They gave him some, and then they gave us little koozies, right, for your beverages, your cold cans, if you will, that also has the penguin on it. And so just while we're talking about it, literally, like, there's an example of just how much I love them that I just put them on my Hydro Flask. There's a little penguin sticker.
Did you ask the establishment why they were penguins?
I didn't. That would have been probably a good question to ask. I think it was more excited that they just actually had the stickers.
That they were penguins and they are pride. Yeah. So you're mentioning the movie?
Okay, so a couple things. So a couple movies, couple references and everything. But the first thing that I wanted to say is, to your point about celebrating individuality, there's a movie called Happy Feet, animated film. Hugh Jackman does the voice of one of the characters and whatnot. Very popular. And it was all about how penguins have these specialized calls or these specialized voices. Now, in the movie, they cartoonize it to be like they have singing voices. So that's why Hugh Jackman is in it. And I think maybe it's Nicole Kidman, or I can't remember who Hugh Jackman's penguin character's wife is, but she's a famous person. They're all singing and everyone's got these beautiful voices and everything. But Hugh Jackman's and his wife, and forgive me for not knowing this, they have a son who can't sing. He's a terrible singer. So he like goes to school and he tries to sing. And of course the teacher's like, oh God, don't do that. Right. And then he starts to go on this journey of feeling super embarrassed about not only his voice, but he can't stop moving his feet. So the movie's called Happy Feet because he loves to dance. Right. So his gift is his feet and how he can dance. And so it's actually a musical talent, but it's just not in the same way that everyone else around him is. So there's shame and there's guilt and there's repression. And then of course, because it's an animated film that ends on a happy ending. For those of you that haven't seen it, but I just ruined it for you. I'm sorry. Spoiler alert.
Okay, but it's like a decade old. So I think
I think it's okay.
I don't think spoiler is a part of this, but
I also don't think you'd go into watching a animated film like that and not expect some kind of good ending. But anyway, nonetheless, so through the vehicle of penguins, which we already know, or at least we're taught are not, they don't follow the standard rules of what makes birds and et cetera. So here's an example in nature of a subspecies that is an exception to the rule. And then they lean into that even more by finding an exception within that group. So super cool that they use penguins in that regard to teach that message. Yeah. And it's just also fun to watch, like heartbreaking at certain times if you get into the storyline for this, this young being and feeling different, and people make fun of him, or other penguins make fun of him, and he wants to find, his true love, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He ends up meeting the rock hopper penguins, which then you get a different kind of penguin, which is cool. So there's a little bit of penguin knowledge in there, but even more so does this animal, I know you're smiling in that cute way, even more so does this animal, and you can probably hear this in my voice, just like smiling about this, does this animal provide so much strength and confidence and peace and acceptance about just who I am, as well as joy about nature's freaking cool. Like nature's super cool that these animals exist and that we exist, and anyway, so that's the Happy Feet connection there.
How long? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Then.
Well, when I was a younger teacher in Manhattan, I received a picture book that's called "And Tango Makes Three," and it is about a same-sex couple, penguins, two male penguins, who mated in the Central Park Zoo, and they wanted to have a baby. Now, penguins are known to mate for life, or at least that's what they say. And so these two male penguins had mated, but they couldn't procreate. And the caretakers at the zoo found an egg that, and I can't remember why, if the mother had two or if the mother died or whatever happened, but there was an abandoned egg. And they gave the egg to the penguins, and they raised Tango, was the name of their baby penguin, and obviously caught a lot of attention, media attention and everything, because this was a big deal that there were gay penguins in the Central Park Zoo. But then they made a picture book about it. So now, even more so, now as a younger teacher, do I get to share with my students what the diversity of families can look like.
Right.
Right. And I can do it through the lens of animals that mean so much to me. I know. Who knew that towel?
I know what I'm getting you for Christmas now. Yeah.
So down the road, when I have, gazillions of dollars, my splurge purchase when I win the lottery is I'm going to take a trip to Antarctica to meet the king penguins or the emperor penguins, which are the beautiful, kind of the tallest of all the penguins that have the gorgeous yellow that's around kind of their neck. I wouldn't mind seeing any of the other ones because I think they're all super cute, but there's just something very majestic about the emperor and the king penguins. And I hope someday, unless we have a listener that wants to sponsor me to go down there, which I'd totally be okay with.
So that's your bucket list.
That's my bucket list item.
I'm going to look at penguins very differently now.
Yeah.
There's so much there.
Oh yeah. Even more so, but I should probably stop because I
totally I have a question for you.
Yeah.
No. So the Penguin Huddle.
Yeah.
Do they have a name? Like, there's like a school of fish and there's like a herd of antelope. Like, what is the group of penguins?
This is a good question. Is it
because I want our listeners to know themselves and celebrate themselves as the individual penguin that doesn't, that dances and doesn't sing, even though it looks like everybody else around you singing, but you can dance, metaphorically speaking, to pursuant to your quoting of the movie.
Right.
So there's the individuality of the penguin, and then there is the being a part of a bigger thing. And
yeah. I mean, if they're birds, I don't know if they would be called a flock, but I don't think that's right. I don't think I've ever heard a flock before. I have heard the term a colony, but that's I often heard that associated with like the rock hoppers because they take rocks and they make little nests. So I've heard of a colony that way, and I've also heard of a waddle, but I don't know if that's just because of the way they walk. So let's just call it a huddle.
The Penguin Huddle. Just because, again, like one of the messages that I just feel is an undercurrent with people is this need for connection. And part of why one doesn't feel connection is because one might feel just so different and so excluded.
Yeah.
But there is re-strengthening and recharging and gift in individuality and not being common and not being what is typically seen as normal. So there's strength and beauty and celebration and gift in that. But then also for those feeling alone and especially feeling lonely, that there is a colony out there. There is a huddle out there. If you reach out and step into the huddle, and it doesn't mean, it's a big party or anything like that, but that there is connection out there and people wanting to connect, and a lot of times not knowing that you need to connect. So reach out, and in doing so, let others reach out to you. Is that too much of a stretch from the huddle?
100% aligned, but as just a reminder along the way, not only that, I am just as I am, simply enough, period. But there's beauty in that, and there's uniqueness in that. And then there's also others, like there's a connection, so 100%.
But then also it doesn't always have to be, I've got this. Because imagine the individual penguin in Antarctica versus look how they're not only surviving, but thriving, because the sum is greater than the parts, in that, each individual penguin finds, another one, and then another one, and another one, and it creates a huddle. And it's just having belief and faith that there are others out there. And reach out and let them reach out to you and huddle up.
And I would say, I would add to that, be open to finding your community in maybe unexpected places. So I went to the University of Notre Dame I knew going to the University of Notre Dame that I was part of the queer community, and there were a lot of stereotypes about what the environment was like at Notre Dame for queer people, largely because of its Catholic foundation, and where the Catholic Church was at the time. And I was told by certain people that it was going to be very difficult for me to be myself there, and that don't be surprised if a year into it you decided to change schools or whatnot. And well-intentioned advice, right? But I met the most beautiful people, and I found my community. And that's not to say it was a perfect institution, but I think I went into it believing that I may not find my community, and I did. So I would also add to what you're saying, which is, be open to finding your community in places that you may not expect it. And that takes work on your part. I actually had to be an active participant. They didn't just find me. Like, I had to go out and do things, and I had to meet people, and I had to put myself out there. But if I had gone based on the advice of the people that were telling me that it was going to be difficult for me, I just wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't have found truly some of the most beautiful people this earth has ever seen.
And I need to clarify another thing too, relative to going so far as to figuring out a name of, colony or huddle or waddle or whatever, because the truth of the matter is too, again, when we pare it down to connection can be one-to-one. It doesn't always have to be one-to-many. So I also want to relieve anybody of the pressure of having to even find their quote group. Find one or two.
Right.
You can have connection one-to-one many, many times. Definitely taking the pressure off. You don't have to find a whole group. And even within the group, you're not going to necessarily agree with everybody in that group. And that's okay. But even within a group where you find yourself, I think of kids, for example, at the lunch table in the cafeteria kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not about taking on and agreeing with the identity of an entire group. It's still just, make a connection and then make another connection. And those connections can either be within one group, and then you find yourself, assimilating to that group and feeling that you belong in that group, or it's amongst different groups. You have one solid connection in group A and another solid connection in group B. And those connections are still just as important, just as fueling, just as grounding, just as strengthening, and just as valid as being a part of a group or a huddle or a colony.
Have you seen the movie Contact? It's based on the book by Carl Sagan, but Jodie Foster was in it.
I haven't.
It's basically like a extraterrestrial alien life kind of sci-fi type of story. And it speaks exactly to what you're talking about. At the end of the movie, one of the characters, in case people want to see it, this whole search for extraterrestrial life, the whole life beyond, and is there intelligent life outside of our solar system or outside of our world? And one of the characters speaks to that point, which is like, you feel so lost, you feel so cut off that you seek validation or proof outside of our world, outside of your world, for other life, when you don't see necessarily all of your connections that you have just on your planet, just with each other. It's really kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's why I like penguins.
Everybody, guess you didn't think this is going to be a study on penguins, but it is amazing, what we can learn from the simplicity of the examples within nature, and how actually, as much as we as humans think that we've got all the answers and we've got it all done right and correctly, that there's actually so much to be learned by the examples that are just simply done in nature.
Yeah. And so that's why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I learned so much about you and penguins that I'm now going to apply to my daily life. Thank you.
And I am also going to take away those moments when I can maybe channel my inner penguin.
You're going to be thinking about that now that I posed that question.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I am. I love it.
Yay. Love you.
Well, thanks, love. Love you.